gorgeous people. It is so nice to see everyone. I took a bit of a break over Christmas and everything, so I get butterflies now when I come on these calls. I'm like, oh my God, what if I forget how to talk to people? But I have got two pros and they're veteran guests on the calls. And so I know this is going to be gorgeous. And already I've had to stop them from saying all the good stuff before you guys logged on. So you guys know the rules. Please put your questions in the chat box and I will direct them to Landon and Suzanne. And I will also send them the chat messages after the call, so they won't miss anything. They have been instructed to completely ignore you guys, as in not you, but the chat box, so they don't get distracted. And let's dive in with two of the most amazing people and experts, hugely prolific in their respective fields. I have got, and I'm going to start with, just because she happens to be on the screen right now, Suzanne Elise Freeman, who we all know. And if we don't know, we've seen the pictures of her wedding. She was like, the movie, it was like the movie star couple, like, Marilyn Monroe when she married, who did she marry? She married who's the baseball guy?
Joe DiMaggio.
Joe DiMaggio. Yeah, that's who it was. Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio. Suzanne and Scott are the Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio of the audiobook world. And we've all seen the gorgeous pictures, and we've all seen the book cover, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in the call, of Landon Beach's latest, like, oh God, you see that cover. If you see that cover, that book cover is more satisfying than most books in their entirety are. And no spoilers, we'll hit on that later in the call. And then I'm going to call Landon up so we can introduce Landon. Landon is a best-selling writer, thriller writer. He has a long working relationship with Scott and also with Suzanne. And he is the writer of Narrator, which I'm especially partial to because it mentions Cup of Joe, and also because it's an unbelievable book. And we're here to talk about latest releases, but I also want to touch on something. So let me call Landon. Landon, can you clear your throat or cough or something?
Hello.
There we go. We've got Landon. Okay. Landon brought up a question for Suzanne. So I did this. I didn't mean to do this. Normally I delve into your pasts and ask you uncomfortable questions about your childhood, but you've both already filled us in on all that. And really interesting topic came up while we were waiting for you guys. And it was, I'm interested in what our work days are made up of. We all know the whole productivity hack and the whole get things done, but mindset is this overarching theme of all of our work days. And to be an audiobook narrator, you're a hugely productive person anyway. I don't care. And don't go at me with, oh, but I've only got 4 audiobooks. I don't care. If you've done an audiobook, you have to be a productive human being. And to be a writer, you have to have discipline that surpasses everything in the world, because staring at a blank page and bringing a world into existence is shocking to me. I can't imagine having that much discipline, focus, and attention. So what I'd like to delve into in the beginning of this call is how you muster the mental, and we touched on fitness, because Suzanne, you don't mind me mentioning?
No.
Okay, so Suzanne had been, we were talking about working out and how some people love it and some people might not so much. And Suzanne said that she did her prep was it on the treadmill that you did it?
Stair mill.
The what?
Stair mill.
Can you tell I'm one of the people that didn't quite love the gym? What's a stair mill?
There's a Stairmaster where you hold the railings and your feet go up and down like this. But there's a stair mill where you're basically just climbing stairs, and it's like it comes one after another, like a treadmill, but you're just climbing stairs the whole time. And there's always like some sort of thing to hold whatever you're reading or looking at. And there are handrails as well, but you don't need them as much because, you know, honestly, if you can go really slowly on a stair mill and still get a great workout. So it's not like you're sitting there like, oh my God, I can't hold on. If you can't hold on, you're going too fast. And so, yeah, I would just put my iPad up there and prep my books while I did
Okay,
cardio.
see, and I just, the fact that being physically, making any physical effort at all and actually concentrating on a book is just, it just seems impossible to me. And then Landon, I cut Landon off right in the middle of a brilliant question because I was like, guys, this is getting too good and we have to save it for the audience. So Landon, what were you saying to Suzanne?
Yeah, I wanted to know while she was on the stair mill how she was doing her prep because I've been on treadmills and whatnot before and read a book, but I can't imagine prepping a book and everything that goes into that. So I was wondering how she did that. Would she pause and take notes or record a quick audio file of something she noticed? I was interested in that.
Um, we most of us, I think the majority of us work on an app called I Annotate, where we have our PDFs loaded. And so we're reading on that, but you can also, you know, highlight words. You can actually, if you're connected to the internet, when you highlight the word, you can put dictionary if you want to know how to pronounce it or the definition or even whatever. And then again, I'm not reading a physical book. I'm on my iPad. But yes, you can actually write notes on the PDF in I Annotate. But if I needed to, I just go over to Safari and look up whatever it is. And I can look up, and I always have my AirPods in. So, you know, if I need to look something up on Youglish or YouTube or whatever it is, yeah, I can do my full prep. No, I'm not physically writing anything down, but I rarely do that anyway when I'm prepping a book. So
But
I
the
don't know if that.
mental aspect of it, because I can't imagine being able to do that. I can't imagine being able to use that focus. You're full up marking up that book while you're full on exercising.
But I would suggest if you can find a stair mill, trying it and going on level number 1. It is the easiest way, genuinely, to get a good cardio workout in because it doesn't feel like you're doing that much. And your heart rate is still exactly in the zone. I mean, if I'm doing intervals, I'm not going to be prepping a book. But if I'm doing a steady state cardio, like I just want, you know, half hour, 45 minutes, hour of cardio, it is the easiest way. Look, I used to do that. Daniela, that used to be me. When somebody would say they were doing an hour cardio, I'm like, are you fucking kidding? Can I swear? I swear a lot, so I hope it's okay if I swear.
Perfectly fine.
Good. But I used to be that person. But I think I was also the person at the time who felt like I needed to be going so fast, no matter what. Like if I wasn't gasping for breath, I wasn't actually working out, which is not the case. So, so once I started like you know, having a heart rate monitor and understanding where my heart rate needed to be to get a decent workout in, again, not intervals. Much harder to do intervals. I'm not doing intervals for an hour. You shouldn't do intervals for an hour.
What is the intervals? Is that like HIIT?
Yeah, HIIT.
Okay.
High intensity, high impact, high intensity in interval training. Yes.
Okay.
It's been a while since I've had to talk about this. I used to be a trainer as well when I was like 19. It was a long time ago. But anyway, so yeah, if you are at a steady state doing really low, really low, honestly, it's not hard. And as long as, you know, if you're like dying because you're so tired and you didn't get very much sleep, then don't do an hour. But it's also,
I'm fascinated by the paths in our brains because I can mark up and concentrate and fully take in a book and also listen to a workshop or a podcast and completely absorb that as well. I can listen and read to two completely separate things at the same time and completely absorb them all. But
yeah.
If I got up to get a cup of coffee and tried to like read some, I would fall on my face. Landon,
there are handrails, so you can do it safely. I swear to you.
When she said that before the call, that's why I wanted to know about it because I also use physical exercise as kind of part of my process, but just not in that way. I take
How
at
do
least a
you?
3 mile bike ride every day. And I'm old school. I put on my over-ear headphones and go around my neighborhood on my mountain bike. But what that does for me is if it's in the morning, it gets me thinking about the book and the pages to work on that day. And then sometimes I've tried it in the afternoon after I've worked. And all of a sudden, just listening to music, being outside, and getting that physical
Yeah.
exercise, some of my best ideas take place. And I literally push it and pedal hard to get back to the house, run inside, and just start writing it down before I forget it. So when she said that she's prepping during a Stairmaster workout, I was like, wow, I'm like, how do you do that? I'm always interested to hear because it's hard enough to get up and work out anyways.
You
Um,
do it, you go in the morning though, Landon?
I alternate. I've tried the morning and I try the afternoon. It's usually the afternoon, but I don't know. I'll get on a roll where it'll be maybe 2, 3 weeks, a month or something like that, and just what's working. So, yeah, it just interests me. And I've heard other professionals too that use working out in a different way to help inform their craft and their creativity. And so when she said that, I was like, wait, I need to know more about this.
But if you think about it, you're taking your brain out of its normal habitat and away from any distractions. So then it feels safe and it can just flow, and you can listen to what's in your head rather than what's hitting you from outside. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah, and when Suzanne and I were working on the Blue Hour Sanction together, I sent her some songs that I thought would be very mood music like to kind of get in the mood for it. And when I'm working on a project, I usually make a soundtrack for myself for every book. And so on those days when I'm taking my bike ride, I listen to those songs over and over again.
I
And
love
it
that.
just
I
gets me
love that.
into the mood to write about it. And then as soon as the book is done, I take them all off and I load up different music. And so that's just how I approach it to keep me in it. Michael Crichton used to wear the same thing every day that he wrote when he wrote a book, and he would have a piece of clothing that had to be just lying on the floor or on a chair in his actual writing room, and he would eat the same thing every day until a book was done. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, that's fascinating as well.
Finding Your Way. There's a book on writers' rituals that I'm fascinated by because I read this one because I do a playlist for every book I record and a Pinterest board. So visually, I can like get myself in the mood. And like some books, I'll like dress up for. My husband's asked me not to do that as often because I do a lot of psycho killer books. but there's a book on writers' rituals. It's fascinating. I'll send you the link to it someday. There was one. It was a famous writer, like not famous writers like you, famous writers like old, like like Kerouac kind of writers, like the old school writers. And there was one woman. I think she was like a French writer, like from the 1920s or something. And her ritual was to sit on her bed, cocooned with like 3 packs of Marlboros and like some like really decadent booze. I can't remember the name of it, whiskey or some booze, absinthe, and like chocolate every day. And that was her ritual. That was when she wrote. She just smoked and ate and drank the whole time. I love that. I love that you have a ritual. I think all the best writers probably do have rituals. Huh?
I don't know. I do know this that every writer that I have talked to and become friends with, they all do have their own way of doing things. No one is quite the same. I mean, we all agree that you got to have the butt in the seat. That is the absolute must. But how you get inspired, how you come up with your ideas, how you sustain that energy to write 100,000 words or 130,000 words, it is different for everybody, but it's fun to listen to what gets someone to the finish line.
So I want to ask a question from a writer's perspective, because you have a viewpoint that we don't often get to hear. Working with two different narrators, Suzanne and Scott, how different is it? Because every narrator is different. We all have our own personalities. We all have our own relationships. How different is it working with the two different narrators? I mean,
It was really similar, actually, because I felt that Scott and I had a really trusting routine down that we used. Um, but it was different with Suzanne because I was looking today, knowing that this call was coming up. It was over a year and a half ago when we first started talking about this unwritten book that we were going to try to do as a project together. And so it was much more front loaded than anything Scott and I have ever done. And it was great, full of fun and interesting conversations. And I mean, we were friends and friendly, but we'd never worked together before. And so you never quite know how that's going to happen. And it ended up being better than I ever imagined. So, in terms of the precision, and I mean, it was just so calm with Suzanne, and the back and forth was easy. And she had a ton of great ideas that I had not even considered before. So I think in that way, maybe it was a little bit more front-loaded and proactive with our communication that way. But the actual process and watching her bring this to life was very similar when I work with Scott.
Do you think
Hey, buddy.
Hi, Scott.
How are you all? It's good
Oh.
to see you.
Happy wedding. Congratulations. We were saying you guys like the perfect movie star wedding of the audiobook world. Oh,
right?
What is that? Huh?
Yeah, he's taking a break, and I was like, "Hey, we're talking about you. Why don't you come over and say hello?"
It's so good to see everybody.
congratulations. Huh?
Thank you. I won't distract you for very long. I just was coming in to say hi. I'm going to grab a quick bite and I got to get back down to the booth.
Well, it's lovely to see you guys. We were all very, very excited to hear. We all felt
Thank you
like we
very
were
much.
wedding guests.
Good to see you, brother. Good to see you.
And now we share the same anniversary.
Yep.
We share the same anniversary,
As
December
Landon and his
29th.
wife. Yep.
Yeah.
As what?
As Landon and his wife. They got married the same day we did.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
that's
Not
actually
the same
quite-
year.
The year, but
Yeah.
yes, when we told them when we were getting married, they were very excited.
Yeah.
So
You guys can all go sometime after you've been married for years and you're all old couples. You can go off on some like wild trip to
Vacation
Ibiza
together
or something on your anniversaries.
Yeah, well, Scott coined it. He said the December 29th anniversary club. So we're all card carrying members now.
Oh.
And two other friends of ours who were at the wedding, it was their anniversary. They had to spend their anniversary at our wedding. But
Vikas Adam, the narrator, yeah.
I think that's lovely. Oh, Vic, I think he's on the call coming
same
up.
anniversary club.
Yeah.
So anyway, I won't distract you for long. I got to get back to the booth.
I'm happy
Landon
for
and I will
you
be in
guys.
touch soon. We'll talk schedule.
Oh, you can't have too much love, guys. Sorry.
That was good
find a
timing.
better thing. So I was thinking about something Landon said, and I've been working with you get Suzanne will know this. When you start narrating, and after a while you start working with publishers, and the publisher work kind of takes over, and then you work less directly with indie writers. And I started this year specifically putting slots in because I needed to be directly in touch with my writers. I mean, I have some old friend writers, but I missed that. I love the publishers, believe me. I'm not gonna say, but the thing I learned, although it was a bit shocking at first, because you forget how much extra work there is, communication, going through the process, talking about different things. And that's what made me think of it, Landon, talking about you and him developing the work together. You forget about that aspect when you work with publishers, don't you? But do you not find, and I can't explain why, we get coaching, right, to be better narrators. But each writer that I'm working with, I'm kind of changing because of them. Like I'm not learning about narrating, but I'm like, they teach you about business, or it's something feeds into your creativity as a narrator. Do you find that working so closely with Landon before the project and the lead up to the project informed your work and left you it's kind of like
Definitely.
a master class, isn't it?
Definitely, but I mean, I definitely had a lot more idea going in what I was looking at. Yeah, I'm thinking through your question because it's really interesting.
And it was a bit kind of going from all sides because I literally just thought of it when Landon was talking.
Yeah. Well, and initially this book was going to be a novella because it is about a character that appears as a character in the series that the last series that Scott has been working on for Landon. She is the main character of the novel of the series that the main character of those books writes. Right. So like basically if it's a series about the woman who wrote Twilight, this book is the real life story of Bella and Edward. But that book is about Stephanie, what's her face? I can't think of her last name. So yeah, so it's really fascinating. So I already had a lot of idea of who she was from Scott's books.
Okay.
And Scott had me do 2 lines because I was a character in the book. Suzanne Elise Freeman is the narrator of the books in Scott's book. So they were talking and they were like, well, I mean, seems like you should probably write this book and probably have Suzanne do it. She's upstairs. I can ask her.
That's so yeah. Love, so it's a creating his own world. It really did create a world. And it's what you did when you mentioned Cup of Joe in the narrator. You brought in the real world.
Yeah.
Landon's the only writer I've ever known that does that. And he does it with everything so well.
Exactly. Honestly, it is a really fun thing. And for instance, it's the final book of the trilogy, correct, Landon?
Yeah.
He has a scene in it in a real life place where Scott and I go. Scott and I are going to meet the characters from the book in the book. Yeah, it's super fun. And I loved how a narrator, he mentioned so many real life people and described so many real life things that you could totally relate to. So yeah.
Yeah, in that, which I'm really excited for, Daniela, because it is the final book in the series, and Suzanne and Scott are going to co-narrate it, and it brings together everything that we had in those first 3 books. But 2, what I've learned in this business is that you treat people with kindness and respect, and then throw out the rule book. Life is short, let's have some fun. And so it was a natural progression to have actually Scott and Suzanne in the book as characters, because it could be done really poorly, like you're just trying to throw them in there and it doesn't really fit. But because I had
established the way you do that, though, somehow you magically make it real.
Thank you for that. So it was establishing Suzanne as the narrator of that mythical series of the book within the book, and then it allowed me to actually explore some questions that Suzanne and I both had when we talked in October of 2022, so long ago. I asked her, I said, if you were narrating this epic 6-book saga, and the publishing industry's biggest question and biggest mystery was, who is this author that she has kept her identity hidden? And I said, Suzanne, if you are narrating those books and you never get to talk to the author and you really connect with the author and you have all these questions pent up that you would want to ask her if you met her one day. And I said, this is, a year and a half ago, I said, what are those things that you would ask if you got to see this person that you got to work with? Because I think that a lot of narrators would empathize with that if they're really attached to the material, and I'm not saying necessarily that Scott and Suzanne were, attached to my material that way, but you all probably have favorite authors that are like friends. And some of them, like you said, with the publishing industry, you just get them from traditional publishers and you have no interaction. And what if it was a mystery of who that person was? I'm sure you're like, gosh, I'd kind of like to meet them one day.
You miss the connection. You really do miss the connection sometimes.
Yeah. And so one of the things that stood out as I was getting ready for the call today was Suzanne had said that one of the things that she would want to know is the things that had really affected her while reading it and narrating it, where she would say, I thought you were going to do this in book 4, and then you went and did this, but I had no one to talk to about it. I just, many authors too, you'd like to talk to your readers, or you'd like to talk to your narrators. For the authors that I know that have no contact with their narrators, they'd really like to have a conversation with them. So that drove some of that final book was, and Scott and Suzanne were generous enough to let me run that scene by them because we wanted to get it right and wanted to be authentic and flow. And it takes place in Musso and Frank Grill, which is a place that I've always personally
Oh
wanted
my
to go
God.
to. But they had all of these really neat inside stories of their relationship that would fit in perfectly with the characters when they show up there.
Yeah.
So, and now readers, because the book came out about a month ago, and now readers have really enjoyed that scene, and I can't wait for them to narrate it. So, yeah, it was just really interesting on this 4-book project, I guess we could call it.
And Suzanne, the reason I reached out to I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you, but the reason I reached out to Suzanne for the first Cup of Joe interview was, and I'm sure you found this having her narrate for you, there is no narrator I've ever met, ever, or heard that connects more with the script. I mean, I've like, I don't know what, and now that I know that you're like literally at the gym knocking out workouts, astonished, but you connect with the script like nothing else is happening. Like it's the thing we're all trying desperately to achieve, and most of the time are able to, but you don't ever seem to like not do it. like
It's
I don't
amazing
know
of
if you
you to
just
say.
cut out all the bits where like your attention wanders, but literally you're the queen at connecting with the script.
That's
So
that's one of the nicest things anybody has ever said to me. I've never heard that before, so thank you.
I thought
Um,
yeah, sorry I didn't mention it. That was
no,
the
you
reason.
may have said that the last time we talked, but I also have a really short attention span and memory. I don't have a short attention span. My memory is not is not what it should be. I always forget things. That's amazing of you. So thank you. I definitely feel like I struggle with that, and I definitely used to like, back in the day when I was starting out and tried to be somebody else. And I go back and hear if I even there's a series I just finished a couple days ago. The series I didn't finish, but one of the books in the series, and I think I may have done it. I've so far like 40 books in this series. It's crazy how many books this woman has done.
Wow.
And so I have to grab every character from everything because you have no idea when that person's going to show up again, because it all takes place around in a general area in the country, and they all intersect with each other's lives. And so who knows? So I went back, and it was like years and years and years ago, this one character that just came out in a book. It came up in a book. And I listened to my character reference for him, and I'm like, oh my, how did I think that this was okay? I don't understand. It was so bad. And I know why it was so bad. It's because I was trying to be Julia Whalen. That's why it was so bad. It was, I mean, horrifically bad. It really sounded like I was listening on like half speed or something. I sounded like I had been like somebody put a tranquilizer in my drink or something. It sounded so bad. And that's not what let me be clear, that's not what Julia Whalen sounds like, but my attempt to be Julia Whalen
Yeah,
sounded.
and that's the biggest lesson, and every single one of us has to learn it, and we all get that lesson. And the
Yes.
reason we all get that lesson is because we start off being ourselves. We really do start off being ourselves. And then the feedback we get
Yep.
is, oh no, don't do that. And then so they say, be authentic, be authentic. So then you're really, really authentic. They say, be the real you. So you're the real you. And they say, no, 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 not that you. So then you start searching around going, right, who's like, who am I supposed to be like? And you listen. And I did it. I did it at one point. I tried the vocal fry.
Oh,
I
did
tried
you?
the vocal fry at the end of the sentence. So I would sound quirky and millennial. Oh my God. I did it for one audition. Thank God it was so disastrous that I never went any further because I booked the job and I was like so offended. They were like, that's the voice we need. And I listened to the audition and I went back. I said, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I feel that I would let you down. This was because I can't do 10 hours of that.
Yeah.
That it's, and also I don't want to do it. It sounded ridiculous. You've got to be kidding me. You don't really like that, but it sounds great when it's someone else doing it. I'm not putting down people that have vocal fry.
Yeah.
You know, that's their thing. But me with vocal fry, you know, you're not Julia Whalen. And
We can't all be Julia Whalen. It's
yeah,
sad for all of us, but it's true.
yeah. And Julia probably wouldn't want us to be anyway. You know what
No,
I mean?
I think she's okay with being the only Julia Whalen.
And I think that's why Landon, and I'm skipping around here, but I think that's what we were saying about Landon bringing real life in. It's something that you do. You can hear, I can hear when Landon talks about us. Oh, it made sense. Look at what I was thinking. I was thinking if we bring them around and they put them in Musso and Frank, and you know what I mean? I can hear your brain creating the scenario as you speak. Landon's not on the internet going, ooh, this writer does it that way, so maybe I'll incorporate that. And a lot of writers do because they're lost. I see them on Twitter and they're like, I should do this. How do you all approach characters? I should do this because you guys are the same as narrators, aren't you? Landon, how did you find your true voice? Did you spend time in your early career looking at what other people did and trying it out?
I think every writer does that. It starts with kind of imitation, and you see, and you're trying to break down what the people that have come before you have done and studying masters. And that's a very, very natural progression. When I took creative writing classes and later taught creative writing classes, one really neat activity to do is to take a short story by a master and cut it off at the 3/4 point and then try to write the ending of it, a different ending that you would prefer, or, you know, but also try to keep it in the same voice. And so there are all kinds of exercises and activities you can do that. But when it comes down to it, for me, for finding my voice, and I've talked to Suzanne about this, is that I have to feel really passionate about the project that I'm working on for me to go all in and be invested in it. She's right. It was supposed to be just a novella, but I got so into it and saw the pathway for it to grow into a novel that I felt compelled to do that. And I'll say also that I had a book that for the last month I was supposed to be working on because there's one more in one saga that I have left to write. And it's been a horrible month because I could not find the story. And I worked every single day. And there are a lot of writers that use that as an excuse when they're procrastinating, like I can't find the story. But literally with me, I've got to find the story and I've got to feel passionate about it. And so a week ago, I just moved it to the side and I worked on something that had come up that I'm really excited for. And I have had the greatest week ever compared to the past month. And so that's really what I have to bring to it. And one last thing I would add about Suzanne and the process of her connecting with the text, that was probably a little bit of a difference between this project and ones with Scott because I got a little bit more of a bird's eye view because we were in such close contact. And she emailed me one time and said, you know, I'm starting to hear the characters' voices in my mind. And I thought that was just incredible. No one's ever said that to me before when they're trying to actually get underneath it. And there were some challenges in this book. I mean, there's a character who's trying to literally become Richard Burton. And so Suzanne had to think about how she was going to navigate performing that part. There was a small child at one point, and how was that going to play out? There was an evil boss, and she scared me the first time I heard it. I was like, my gosh. I was like, I don't want to have Suzanne mad at me.
Okay, I have a
So
question.
it was neat to see that. It really was. I hear what you're saying.
I'm sure Suzanne and Scott get very close to how it sounds in your head. And you also probably have learned through the process that you listen to them and that creates what it sounds like in your head. But is
And a
it,
lot of times better than what I was in my head, I
yeah, see, I
imagine.
love hearing
Just
that. I love
those
hearing that.
surprises are just so great when they happen.
But what do you say to a writer that isn't aware of that to explain that to them, that there's a bit of letting go? Because you're handing your baby over to someone and you are letting go of it, complete trust. how do you explain that to someone without making it sound like, without scaring them and making them run for the hills?
Right. So some evil self-promotion, have them listen to Narrator and Scott first. Just kidding. But what I would say is, it is never going to sound exactly how you had it in your head. That's why people still read physical copies of books, because they want to have that immersive experience of what was in their own mind. But you've written the book. No one's ever going to take that away from how they sound in your head. You can go to bed every night and read your own work and hear them, and they will be the same. But to trust these gifted artists and professionals who know what they're doing and are going to bring it about and your work to life in a way that you don't expect, and that to trust that. And I think coming to peace with that early, I think probably would help a lot of authors. And it is sort of a joke about Narrator, but literally a couple of my friends that until they read that or listened to it, they really had negative opinions of the industry, because they're like, they're not doing it the way I wanted. This is not how it was. But they didn't know anything about the craft and about what you all do. And when you start to learn that, they all took a big step back and said, I should not be treating my narrator that way. Some of them went public with comments, and I said, no, no, hold back. You need to learn something first.
Because when you work together, because I've got some books where it's like, I mean, first of all, and I think I can speak to 99% of the narrators, like definitely any narrator I know that's watching Cup of Joe, I can speak for. We are taking your characters more seriously than like your mother or father would take their children. Like we are like, all we care about in the world is getting that right. And yeah, it is. It's you want them to understand. Trust me. I swear I'm not going to accidentally drop your baby. Do you know what I mean? And then the other thing is we don't want to submit that book and have you disappointed. Because that's us putting our heart and soul in, like you put your heart and soul in, and then having somebody like hate it. You don't want to do that either. I think so. That's it. And the thing is when the book is finished, it's what Suzanne said. She heard it in her head. This is a good one for Suzanne. Do you feel that you still carry the characters with you a few days after the book sometimes? Like, do you feel that?
Definitely sometimes. Yeah. I mean, we, depending on what genres you do, there are a lot of very somewhat formulaic stuff that we do that maybe some of the characters don't jump out at you the way some other characters in another book might. But what's killing me about the book that I did for Landon is that he has no plans to do another one. And this was left with so much unanswered, not in a bad way, just this person is going to go on and have the rest of her life. Not that there were questions in this plot that weren't answered. It's just there's so much more. So I just, I'm like, how is she going to do the thing and take down the evil boss? And like, what's going to happen? So yeah, it does kind of drive me crazy, because I was like, oh, I wonder when the next one come out. And then I talked to him and he's like, I'm not planning on doing another one. Dude, I mean, I don't care about me. I'm talking like, I just want to know what else happens.
They kill us with that. Mark Rice Oxley was the narrator. I listened to 2 books he did. I am going to be very careful because I don't want to mispronounce the writer's name, but I listened to 2 books he did, time travel, amazing. And I contacted him. A total stranger, I've never heard of him in my life. I said, oh my God, when are you going to do the next book? I'm waiting. And he was like, oh, the writer's got no plans to do the next book. They've done it now, but I don't think, I think Landon, you probably realize, but I don't know if they realize how much. There was one, I'm not going to say why because it's out now and people might be watching. I don't want to give any spoilers, but there's a show that's out how do I say this without giving a spoiler? It didn't end the way I wanted it to end.
That's funny. I talked about that last time. Go on.
Just a show.
Yeah.
And I'm like bereft and pissed off. And I want to like go complain to the management because how dare that writer do that? You know, and you forget I think, Landon, that your books are published, and Suzanne, that your narration is out there and it now belongs to the listeners, huh?
Yep.
And yeah, and as a listener, I'm like so angry that they ended it that way. It's like, how dare they? I've got to be very careful. I don't want to spoil it for people because, and I'm in the
well,
UK,
I want to know what this is about, but also that's funny because last night I did the webcast for the APA, and when we were talking about what to know before you go to APAC, and I always tell this story in terms of just how to interact with people, publishers, everybody, and that is that I met Paul Gagne from Scholastic at a mixer, and I had no idea who he was, and he didn't have anything on his name tag that said who he was. I thought he was kind of like a shy narrator, to be honest with you. So I kind of just spent a really long time talking to him about stuff. And the majority of what we were talking about are disappointing like wrap-ups to series or books. So that's that. And I was just telling the story last night. And it turns out, because I started talking about Hunger Games and my kind of approach to Hunger Games. And then he said, "Did you listen to that audiobook?" And the way he asked it, I was like, wait a minute. Maybe this guy isn't who I think he is. And I said, no, I had a really hard time with part of it. And I don't want to say what it is because I don't want to criticize another narrator because it had nothing to do with her. And he's like, oh, just tell me what you thought. And I told him, he goes, that's what I thought too. And I'm like, did you make that audiobook? And he goes, yeah, I produced for Scholastic. And I'm like, I've just been talking to this guy for an hour, which is great. I'm thrilled that I didn't talk to him about work because I hate doing that. I hate trying to freaking teach myself. I'm the worst.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was funny because that is how we got into the entire conversation about that. Like, yeah, I was just talking about that.
And I love that it went in a positive note.
Yeah.
Whereas the one time I did it, I rocked up to a publishing event in the UK. Did I tell you about this? I rocked up to a publishing event and I was really nervous. And I was like, oh God, I'm at this place. I would go running in. I was like running late. And they were so nice. And they were so welcoming. Arms around my shoulders. They were like, name tag. Everyone had a name tag. And they were like my best friends within like 15 minutes. And then the speaker gets up. It was a cult. I was on the wrong floor. And I'd given my brand new cards. I was so proud of. I'd given them to everyone, like 40, 50 people. Like I was like 15 minutes. I am the networking queen. I'm going to be the biggest audiobook narrator on earth. By the time I got up to the actual publisher event, I had sweat dripping down my head. I looked like I was in shock. I had no cards left. And I had cult members contacting me for the next like month and a half.
God.
It was like Cult of the Rising Sun Daffodil Lovers or something.
That's awful. That's awful. I mean?
Sometimes it can work well.
Yes. Well, I knew I was in the right place. I was at an APA social. I was aware that I walked into the right bar.
You always check the room.
Yeah.
So, okay.
That's awful and funny.
It was quite embarrassing. So I love this because I'm really, really focused on what makes us good and human and successful, and it not being what we see on paper. So what makes Landon creative? I think part of the crucial part of that takes place when he's on his bike. It's not even what you think it is. Do you know what I mean? So like and I'm wondering if what makes you so focused when you're doing the audiobook is partly because, as you said, you have a bad memory. If your mind isn't always like this, it's like this.
Yeah.
And that could be part of the magic. So it's like those indefinable, what's making me feel like I'm growing in leaps and bounds isn't what I thought would be, like coaching, all that, which is helpful and wonderful. But right now it's learning different things from the writers I'm working with. Do you know what I mean? It's changing me as a human being. So like the things we do that change us as human beings, like your wedding.
Yeah.
I bet your wedding, your happiness came through and has changed your narration.
Well, it definitely does. I mean, I do a lot of romance. And when there's always, not always, often a culminating scene where somebody's proposing and somebody's getting married and everything. And I mean, I will
After
admit
eight
when I was single
hours.
that it was a lot. What?
After 8 hours, and you've been trying to tell them from page one.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
That's okay. I will admit that when I was single and, not, I mean, I wasn't miserable as a single person, but, every once in a while, you just like, I just, like, is there ever anybody that I will connect with? And so every once in a while, I would get to one of those proposal scenes. And I will even admit that this happened when I was with Scott because he hadn't proposed to me. And I would get to those scenes and I'm like, oh, just fuck you. Just fuck all of y'all. I don't want to hear about your amazing romance and your amazing proposal and your amazing wedding. Like, yeah. So, but yes, now that I had a lovely proposal and I had a wonderful wedding. And so yes, that does make me enjoy it more. So I think it definitely affects me. But I actually can I just go off in a slightly different direction from what you were just saying?
I have been the whole hour. Go ahead.
So this book I just finished, the one I'd done a million books of, the main character whose voice was so terrible in the one I did years ago, the main male character, had in the book dyslexia and some other, ways in which his brain just didn't work the way people expected him to. And he was called lazy in school and that he just, didn't work hard and stuff. And this woman somehow, I mean, I don't know how she does it because again, this is so many of these books, so many of these like relationships where they start out, attracted to each other, but they don't think they should be together. And then they end up, and then there's something that one of them is just like, no, I can't do it. I can't be in love. I can't commit to a really whatever.
But she does it so
every
well, you're buying in on it, every one of them, huh?
Yeah, but somehow she has something incredible in every book that I'll like, take a screenshot and show it to Scott going, oh my God, like how does she come up with this stuff? And she's one of I have some of the most fun narrating her stuff because it's so conversational and it's just so easy, like it's stream of thought. Anyway, the more they kind of got into his dyslexia and learning disabilities, the more I was thinking about my childhood and worrying that I had a stutter. And there's a really long story that I won't go into, but I also have ADHD, and I started thinking I mean, it was really getting to me. It was really making me emotional. I was talking about this, like describing this guy's challenges and struggles. But that, as happens, your mind starts going off in different directions. And I was like, again, I host this webcast for the APA, and I was like, I need to talk about this on the show. And so like within an hour, while I'm narrating and trying to focus, I started having more and more ideas for this show. And so I'm going to do it now for mental health awareness month in May. And we're going to talk about neurodivergence and coping strategies and how to like work as a freelancer and keep yourself on track. And I just got an email from Lisa Kahn, who agreed to be on the show.
Do you have the date for it?
Yep,
So,
May 21st.
Would you mind because I won't remember. I know myself. Would you mind sending me the date, and I'll stick it in the about section as mentioned in the YouTube video if you're in time. You know, okay.
Yeah, it's not up for registration yet because we had to I just told Michelle about this last night, and so she's like, send me a description and we'll put it up for registration. So I have 2 guests now. I'm thinking about doing a third. I have to have somebody co-host with me. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely throw that date at me, and then I'm going to pull Landon up real quick because I also would like, please, Landon, clear your throat real quick. Okay, thank you. I would like, please, if you could send me the chronological order or perhaps links of the books that lead up to the book that Suzanne did, and who did the cover.
Isn't that
Who
amazing?
did that cover? Who?
I'm really happy with my design team. When I was originally thinking about going into audiobooks, I wanted to make sure that I had the professional covers to go along with the performance. If it was unclear whether I was going to be able to work with Scott, still waiting to hear back if he was going to do the books or not. And then when he did a lot of research and found a cover artist that I love who does all of my covers now, and really collaborative and
Would
just
you be happy to
fantastic.
share their name? Would you be happy to share their name?
Absolutely. We could put that in the
put it in the links.
Yeah. I'll send that to you, and I'll send you the links of what's really the 4 books that are the start and end of the series that I just finished, and that there's only one more book that has to be narrated, and that's Scott and Suzanne, and that's coming up in the future. And so that'll bookend it. The whole thing will be done.
We'll put those links, but I'd love to credit that cover artist because that is something so beautiful. I just think
he sent me 2 options or maybe 3. I can't remember how many you sent me, but he actually sent them. I really want to explain how much better prepared and how much more information Landon gives than anybody I've ever worked with. Because you were talking about, and Landon was saying that I told him that I was hearing the characters in my head, but he also sent inspirations, photos of actors, of people who he had in mind, but also for that Richard Burton stuff that he was talking about. The character was trying to make himself into Richard Burton. He sent me links to YouTube clips with Richard Burton with like actual time codes for where I could go to listen to like a line that he was quoting in the book. I mean, he took so much of he saved me so many hours for research and prep. And it's so delightful. Like, I think there are a lot of narrators who might not want that kind of input, like not input, but like that kind of, they want to be able to create the characters on their own. I mean, I think that's kind of bullshit. Like, you know, if the author has something in mind, granted, I'm not going to do the exact same thing that he wants, but if I'm looking for a character voice, I'm trying to figure out who this person is in my head.
You want as much feedback as you
right.
But I think that's what I was saying earlier. That's why I've got to refine my message, because it's really important to me to get it across. I am trying to literally soak up their brain before the sample. Like I want, while I'm setting the characters, while I'm planning them, while I'm getting their voices, it's once I've started narrating, then those choices have to have been done. Do you know what I mean? Once I start narrating, I can then change things.
Yeah.
But somebody like Landon, that's like a pure treat. I mean, if you're a narrator out there watching this video and you think you're somebody that wants less input, just don't.
Daniela, I think it's always about just communication and collaboration. I mean, what we established, Suzanne and I, very similar to what Scott and I established, was, I trust you completely as a professional to do your job and to bring your own art form of taking a piece of art, which is a book, and turning it into another piece of art. But also, too, it was always under, would you be open to me giving you some things, some supplementary material to take a look at, knowing that you can always take it or leave it. And
Yeah.
that I think makes everybody comfortable because Suzanne wasn't under pressure to be like, oh, he just wants this to be read this way. And I didn't feel left out in the wind like, oh my gosh, if she had this, then maybe it might inform her performance. Not that you have to do that. So I think if you approach it the right way from the beginning,
Yes.
and
The
then
trust
I think
factor.
Suzanne would agree, we had 3 conferences, but when it came time for that week for her to record it, it was crickets. She's doing her thing, and I'm letting her work her magic. And then we would touch base afterwards here and there. That's important too, because I do respect the craft of when you're in that moment, the last person a narrator needs to hear from is an author. You got to get that stuff done beforehand.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
the
mean,
trust factor.
Landon, we have not talked about the fun thing, and it's a callback to the first thing we talked about tonight. You know what I'm
Right.
talking about?
Do you want to handle it or should I? It's
That's the
astounding. Like
question.
I can't even believe that. I still can't believe that happened. I
I know.
What
laughed today
happened?
thinking about we were going to be on this call. I'm like, that happened.
So
Okay, guys.
as Landon mentioned, we did a pre-writing conference, and he was like, what do you want to see? What do you hate about, you know, like what do you hate about thrillers? With like if you watch a movie or read a book and you just hate this part, like what do you want to see? What don't you want to see? And he was like, I'm assuming you don't want to see the woman have to get rescued by the guys. And I'm like, yes, that is definitely true. But we talked about all this kind of stuff. And again, bad memory. So when I read the book, the first chapter, or no, it wasn't the first chapter, it was the second chapter.
Yeah,
When
second
we're
chapter.
being introduced to the main character, Adrian Astra, I start reading about her background and how they recruit all of these spies that they're training. And I'm like, did we talk about this? I don't remember talking about this, but we had to have talked about this. There's no way that this could be a coincidence. So when we had our just pre-recording conference, I said, did I tell you about this? And he said, no. So go ahead, Landon, you talk about it.
Yeah, so it was the idea that I came up with because I'm trying to come up with this kick-ass female protagonist who came out of nowhere and became the world's most lethal assassin. But stories like that, especially origin stories, so much has been done. But one thing I thought was, what if this shadow company was hiring superior athletes that didn't necessarily need them to be spies, although they could grow into spies, but assassins, where they would use their physicality. And I said, what if they just targeted heptathletes, which are supposed to be, our world's greatest athletes? And I went with it and I created this whole backstory. I had to learn where the national championships were that year that I said it. And so patted myself on the back and I'm like, all right, Suzanne, have at it. And lo and behold, and we never talked about this. This is so crazy. She said, well, do you know I was a heptathlete in college, right? I'm like, what? What are you talking about? She says, we had to talk. I'm like, we never talked about that.
But that's
It was
why
crazy.
it's the creative. It's that, who's that woman that did the big magic? I can't remember her name, Elizabeth something or other. And she was talking about like if there's like a work that's meant to be done, and if you don't do it, somebody else. So the idea that creativity and ideas are magic and they're out there in the air, and it's our job to be like guardians of it. So that synergy between the two of you, it's the idea that the work, the creativity is a real living energy. It's in the air, and whoever comes across it first, you can mold it. You guys, so like you guys, you created the magic. The magic was there and you shared it. So there's a synergy between the author and the narrator. And that is like gold. That is like, I think the most wonderful part of this job is, and I encourage anyone, oh my God, I wish I'd gone back to this. Hannibal Hills, I don't know who knows Hannibal, but he spoke in my language and made it make sense to me. Because I think when you narrate for a while, you start thinking that working directly with authors, it's, gosh, because there's the issue. Sometimes people don't understand. There's micromanaging, there's the technical problems, there's contracts, and there's also snobbery. If you're working only for publishers, you're a good narrator. If you're working for anyone else, then obviously you couldn't cut it and get enough work with publishers. And I think it's so sad because Hannibal reminded me that we've lost that magic that two people working on this piece and putting their heart and soul in can achieve. I mean, the fact that you wrote that, it was in the air. You two worked together and directed your focus and love to one project. And that's when something special comes out, I think.
Yeah, well, I don't think, Daniela, that I am, just knowing myself, I don't think that I'm ever going to be the kind of writer who writes 3 or 4 novels a year. I just handle things differently. And so because there's a finite number of books that I'm going to write in my life, and I go all in and give everything that I have into that particular project, it does make it special. It's a timestamp. It's a marker that you can look back on. And looking back on this now that the book has been out for, 7 or 8 months now, I just think back to, because of that investment and just Suzanne's perspective from someone who had read and performed thrillers for, her career, like you had in your intro. I mean, she's done over 350 books. That was valuable information that gave me ideas I would have never come up with on my own. And you can't just say, oh, well, your narrator just tell you what the plot is. But her keen insight and passion, I think, for the project, I think drove it to be a better book because I was invested and I wanted to write something that, she was going to be proud of to put out there and that we would both have ownership of, that we would both own it. So that has the potential to absolutely blow up and destroy both artists, but it also has the potential to bring together and make it stronger. And that was the case, I think, with us. So I do appreciate that aspect of it. Like I've said, many people talk to their friends and family about books and get ideas, but I don't think, at least in my experience, I haven't heard of a lot of authors that involve their narrator before the book is written and start that relationship early. So that's something I think I'll walk away with. Not that it's something that you make as your procedure, like, oh, now I do this for every book. But for this particular instance, it was like, let's try it and see what happens. And yeah, it was really rewarding.
And also finding your place as a narrator, because you know how they say authentic voices and find your, and it's what Suzanne said. There is the right voice for every book or voices, but there is I think some books find you. And I mean, seriously, synchronicity, heptathlete, you know what I mean? I'm a narrator. I never even heard the word. I think maybe you mentioned on your first interview, and that's it. The odds of that, like 1 in a zillion.
No, I wouldn't have talked about that. That's not really that. Honestly, I kind of forget about it sometimes. So,
1 in
so
a
yeah,
million, huh?
huh?
That's a 1 in a million odd.
Kind of really was. It
Yeah.
really kind of was. Yeah.
So you were meant for that book. Well, guys, I already have I'm not going to make you guys answer that. If you could take away one thing, don't worry, I will let you off the hook because you've both done the calls before. And I think there's so much wisdom in this call that you've pretty much covered all bases. Can you give us a quick elevator blurb for the book you guys did together, Landon?
All
Let's
right.
end on that with that gorgeous cover, so that's the last thing we all hear because it's so beautiful.
So a small town girl from Michigan becomes the world's most lethal assassin. However, early on in her training, her mentor is killed. And when she finally gets her first mission, it is to sanction slash assassinate the man who killed her mentor, who happens to be part of a global criminal empire and is trying to transform himself into the actor Richard Burton. And it is an origin story unlike anything you've ever read, performed by my dear friend and amazing narrator, Suzanne Elise Freeman, who brings Adrian Astra to life in ways I never thought I couldn't even imagine. So check it out and get ready for the ordinary world to disappear.
I'm so excited that you guys joined us. I am. And I completely expect to see pictures of you when you go on your double date anniversary in a few years and tipping drinks somewhere exotic. And I have a really, really good feeling, and I can't wait to hear about the next book, the one that Suzanne and Scott are doing together. So I wish you all the best. You guys, if you've not known, if you've not wondered why it's Landon Beach is on again, it's because, gosh, he's like, look at this guy. He's a writer and he loves us. So, you know what I mean? I can't get enough of Landon Beach. So thank you. Let's hear it for Landon and Suzanne. Oh my God, the queen of focus. You guys are amazing.
Thank you for having us.
Fabulous. Thank
Oh,
you.
thanks for having us on, Daniela. It's just an honor and something I never take for granted. So it means a lot to me, and also what you do for the narrating community, the narrators I've gotten to meet, just lifelong friends.
Yeah, we all love you. We all love Landon Beach. And don't forget to send me the link to the webcast. Webcast, right, Suzanne?
Yes, webcast.
Okay, I
Yep,
know
yep,
I'm
yep.
not supposed to say the other one.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know me so
I
well.
remember that from the first. Thanks so much, you guys. Thank you for joining the gorgeous studio audience. Mwah! Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.